So he gathered these families, and we came to an arrangement where they could graze cattle on some of El Uno's pastures in exchange for specific types of grazing management practices on their own lands, as well as some restoration efforts. And so it's been just 2 years, but we've already seen a 60% increase in forage capacity. We've got a total of 10,000 acres under improved management. Viejito is no longer selling cattle to cattle buyers in the region for export. They've just recently did their own export, and they're talking about setting up a cooperative so that they can become more professional and business-like to do that. So that's really exciting for us. And about a month ago, I was talking, well, about 6 months ago, I suggested to the private rancher, the other lessee that we're working with, that he go check out the pastures that Angel Martinez, the Hidatario, is managing. And he did that. And he gave me a call last month and said, you know, I think we're willing to work with you on X, Y, and Z, and we're going to buy some electric fencing, and we're going to rotate our cattle, and we want to modify our grazing plan. So for us, that was a real positive sign that something is shifting. Even though, you know, we're starting with a couple people, you've got to start somewhere to get that change. So the third component is environmental education, which is often it's highly undervalued, but we believe it's tremendously important. It's a tremendously important vehicle for carrying out our conservation objectives and our mission, especially if we want to be successful in conservation. The community has to see a positive future for itself. And as I've mentioned a couple times, ranching communities are they're really challenged in many areas. They're aging. The average age of rancher now in North America is about 58. So youth is not seeing a future in ranching, farming. In Mexico especially, in some of these isolated communities like Janos, youth are either getting involved in the drug trade, they're migrating to cities for jobs, or they're crossing the border to the U.S. to escape pressure from getting involved in the drug trade. So it's a real problem. So the kids, when we think about our education work, and it's about helping kids reimagine their future so that they can contribute to the community and to the sustainability of the community in the future and want to stay there. So we collaborate with various partner organizations on a number of different educational activities that include school visits. We had 654 kids visit our schools in the last 5 years, or are preserved. And we've worked with teachers on incorporating environmental concepts and grassland ecosystem concepts and knowledge into the curriculum at school. And one of our most successful platforms has been what we call the Youth Ecology Clubs. And this is a way to get kids involved in bird monitoring and identifying plants and wildlife and get them out into the field. And so we're working with schools to set up these clubs at different schools. And 3 years ago, a group of 5 13-year-old girls volunteered to be the first club, to be the test club. And these girls are amazing. They've immediately taken on a leadership role. They've equipped them with binoculars, with laptops, with bird guides, and they're just inspiring other kids to get involved. They're training other groups of kids to form clubs and training them on, you know, some of the wildlife monitoring and the bird monitoring. They've gotten involved in monitoring projects on our preserve as well as on some of the ejidos land. So it's very exciting, and what I do like about this group of girls is that they've got this, they've shown kids that nerdy, science doesn't have to be nerdy, and nerdy can be cool. They have this, before each activity, before they go out, they have a group makeup session, because there is a term, saying in Spanish, antes muerta que sencilla. I don't know if any of you have heard that before, but essentially it means, you know, I'll die before I go out looking, you know, unmade and my hair not done. I mean, a woman must maintain her look and style. So they'll get together and they'll put on makeup and style their hair, and then they'll go out and do other training sessions and go out into the field. So it's really, really nice. And the last thing I want to leave you with is that there's a middle school student who was asked by his teacher, and he's in one of the other communities that's near the preserve. He was asked by his teacher, you know, what do you think you want to be when you grow up? And he said, I want to be a sicario. I think that's what I want to be. Well, sicario means cartel hitman. And I mean, it's shocking, but this is true. I want to be a sicario. This is the image of success for many kids, especially boys, in these small rural communities in northern Mexico. And 2 years later, he was asked again, what do you think you want to be when you grow up? And he said, you know, I thought I wanted to be a sicario, but now I'm really thinking I want to study ecology. So for us, that was just so, you know, wonderful. And I'd say, well, we have a long way to go. There are a lot of challenges, and I didn't have time today to go into all of that. I wanted to share with you some of the positive signs of change that we're seeing. And recently I asked a few people to share their dreams for the community, and here are some of their responses that I'll read. People are aware of and understand nature's needs. They value sustainability. They promote these values with their families and sons and daughters. A vibrant, flourishing community in which young people envision a positive future for themselves. Pride in our natural and cultural heritage. And as you enter the town of Janos, there's a mural that reads, Janos, la última praia. The word última in Spanish can mean two things. It can go two different ways. It can mean this is the last remaining prairie because we've screwed up the rest of the ecoregion, or it could mean this is the greatest and best example of prairie. And so we had a replica of the mural painted on our headquarters at the Oluna Reserve. An environmental educator at one point said to our branch manager, you know, we had forgotten what that really meant, so thank you for reminding us. And, so that's it for you. I don't know if there are any questions, comments.
I'm curious about the Mennonites. You usually think of Mennonites as being farming rather than ranching.
They are. They're mainly farming. They do have dairy cattle.
Yeah. And what's the agriculture in the region? What is it?
Corn, alfalfa, sorghum, cotton. There's a lot of cotton. There's a lot of center pivot agriculture, mainly by Mennonite farmers.
Any problem with the water table yet?
Oh yeah. There is. It's it's over. People are digging deeper wells illegally. And in fact, Chihuahua State, only about 2% of the wells were actually regularized, legal. So it's a huge problem. There's a lot of illegal pumping, and the state just a year ago was trying to get that under control. And so there's a new legislative process that's happening that's trying to get people to kind of grandfather. There's a kind of a grandfathering process of people who are digging wells illegally and using water concessions illegally, that they can try to recapture some of these rights.
I know in the Sonoran Desert, it's for some time now had impact on the plant life in the desert, and the animals drop the water table. Are you seeing that outside?
It's a good question, because there are all kinds of factors. I mean, the water table, or climate change, climate variability. But yeah, I mean, even if you think about some of these species which are found in the desert, like some of the cactus, prickly pear, cholla. We have quite a bit of mesquite invasion in one area of the preserve, and we're trying to figure out why. It seems to be a corridor, and not really spreading out this way, but spreading kind of north-south. So we're trying to figure out that, and if it's related to water and
I visited the Mechusa Grasslands last year in Illinois, and they called it like a bison Christmas when it came. Like, did you get additional funding, or did some of your maintenance and did some of your operations improve with the bison? Did it improve your budget? I mean, did it make it easier to do what you do when you got the bison?
That's a great question. Yes and no. We do receive funding from the Mexican federal government. This is what I didn't mention is that this is a high-profile project from the Mexican federal government, and so El Uno is serving as a kind of the seed conservation herd for a larger redistribution effort at some point. And so for 5 years now, we have received funding from the Mexican government for bison management. It doesn't cover all of our costs. We've had some really large costs of building new corrals and all the infrastructure that goes into it. But at the same time, there have been times when we haven't gotten enough funding to cover kind of our portion of that in putting the funding, match funding together. But the work must still continue. I mean, we have these animals. We feel an overwhelming, obviously, responsibility for them. Myself and the staff have grown to love them. They're like our babies, and yeah. So we get about $75,000 a year from the Mexican government, and it changes depending on their budget.
Sure.
Any other questions? No? Thank you.
Do the Mennonites speak German?